So here we are right at the end of 2024, so that means today I'm recording my December reading wrap up. I absolutely had a fantastic reading month in the month of December, so I'm really pleased that I ended the year off on a high. In fact, 5 of the books that I read were 5-star reads, and most of them will be making their way into my top favourites of the year. So stay tuned for 2 videos that I'm going to be recording soon. One is my top 10 romances of 2024 minus mafia romances, and then I'll also do my top 8 mafia romances for the year as well. But enough about that for now. Today we are focused on the month of December, and I'm going to kick straight off with the reading stats. So I read 15 books in the month of December, which basically means I hit my target of 180 books for the year. So with those 15 books, that took me to 5,455 pages for the month, which was 176 pages per day. Like I said, I had 5 5-star reads, then I had 3 4.5 stars, 2 4 stars, and 5 3.5-star reads. In terms of the genres or the subgenres, I had 1 alien romance, 2 contemporary, 3 dark, 1 dystopian, 1 erotic, 2 fantasy, and 5 mafia romances. And then in terms of how I read, I listened to 1 completely as an audiobook, 1 I started as an audiobook and finished on KU, 12 were KU reads, and 1 was a physical read this month. So the very first book I picked up in December was Kingdom Fall by A. Zavarelli. Now this has got a shiny surface, so hopefully it won't be too reflective on screen. I'll try and hold it slightly at an angle. Now this one is part of the Underworld King series, and this one is a mafia romance. In fact, this has been recommended to me on several occasions. It's been on my TBR for a while, and I finally picked it out of my TBR jar to be read in December, so I jumped straight into this one. This is a nanny romance. It's a secret society. We've got a single dad, and also this is basically following a bit of a revenge plot as well. We're following Natalia and Alessio. So I absolutely love this one, and I rated this one 5 stars. Would absolutely highly recommend, and it's going to be in my favourites for the year for sure. So what we know about Alessio is that he is part of this secret society. He's fairly highly regarded and very highly ranked in this secret society, and his main task really is to be an assassin. So this is a very kind of like dangerous sort of person. And we also know at the start of this book that he is a single parent to a little boy who is about 6 years old. And then we have Natalia, and she has applied for a nanny position with Alessio because Alessio needs basically a nanny to help him look after his young son. Now he's obviously looking for a very particular type of person, and whoever gets employed by him is pretty much going to be employed for the long haul, right? Because he's going to need to do a lot of background checks on them. He's going to need to make sure that whoever he employs is going to look after his son correctly, follow all security protocols. And so when this job advert goes out, it's a bit mysterious. In fact, he doesn't really even give away where this nanny needs to be living, because ultimately this will be in a live-in nanny position as well. But Natalia is one of the people who applies for the job. When they first sort of meet, they meet in this sort of cafe, and he almost like immediately dismisses her. But she is quite feisty, and she says the right things to intrigue him enough for him to take the interview further, and eventually he does employ her as his new nanny. But it's very clear from the start that Natalia has got some sort of hidden agenda, that yes, she is a nanny and seeking employment, but specifically she has targeted him and is sort of infiltrating his household, and we don't really know why or what's happened or what her real motivations are, or even who's asked her to do this. But we know that there's definitely something going on. However, it's also very, very clear that she gets on very well with the son straight away, is very, very protective of him, and stands up for him on a lot of occasions as well. So she is a fantastic nanny. And of course, now they are going to be kind of in the house together, Alessio and Natalia spending more time together. They've got a lot of chemistry, but they're also trying to figure each other out because like I said, it's clear Natalia is there with hidden motives, and Alessio is sort of quite a paranoid, very suspicious kind of person, very, very protective of his son, and also his own kind of emotions, because he doesn't really think he has any, and so he's definitely keeping this woman at arm's length. So I absolutely love this one because I really like the sort of intensity of this novel, the chemistry between this couple, this kind of mystery that we start to unravel as we go through the story, trying to figure out exactly who he is, what the secret society is all about, and kind of why she is there. And so I thought it was an absolutely fantastic plot. There was a lot of mystery, a lot of suspense, a lot of action, and I just thoroughly enjoyed this one and absolutely was obsessed while I was reading it and didn't want to put it down. So would highly recommend. Then after that I picked up Truth by Trilina, and this is book 1 in the King Brothers series. This is another mafia romance, and this was also another recommendation that I pulled from my jar and was recommended by a viewer. So if that was you, thank you so much for the recommendation. This was very much an insta love sort of story. It was a one night stand. There were some BDSM elements to this one, and we had an absolutely obsessed hero, and we were following Dominic and Drew. Now overall I enjoyed this one, rated it 3.5 stars, and read this one on KU. Dominic is part of the mafia and he owns this club. It's an exclusive sort of gentleman's club slash sex club. Drew, meanwhile, is kind of a regular sort of woman. At the start of this book, we see a glimpse into her life, and she has a boyfriend. In fact, she lives with him, but it's very clear they don't get on. He's not really treating her the way he should. He doesn't really seem to respect her. He belittles her. He's gaslighting her all the time, and everything's about him and what she should be doing for him and his career, and he doesn't really pay too much attention to her. And it comes to a bit of a head because he wants her to go to a hen party, because the people going to this hen party are the partners of important, influential people where he works, and he kind of thinks if he goes that'll be good for him because she'll be in with the women and then they will be able to say good things about him, and that will help him with his career. So he kind of forces her to go on to this hen party, and she doesn't really want to. And so before she goes, she kind of feels like when she comes back, she's definitely going to be leaving him. And this is going to be her last sort of thing that she does for him, if you like. When they go on this hen party, they actually end up at this sex club because one of her friends has got them tickets to get in. And when Dominic sees this hen party in his very prestigious club, he is not too happy with the bouncer for letting them in, kicks all of the women out except for Drew, who he's very much taken a shine to. And instead of kicking her out, he kind of convinces her to stay with him for the night, and they end up having 24 hours together, and this is an amazing 24 hours. In fact, so amazing that they kind of fall in love with each other. In particular, Dom becomes completely obsessed with her and does not want her to leave. But of course, she's in a completely different headspace to him because she's just about to break up with her boyfriend. She doesn't feel like she's in a position really where she wants to dive straight into another relationship with another person. She really wants to get her life together and figure out who she is and kind of stand on her own 2 feet for a little bit before she gets too embroiled with someone else. So at the end of the 24-hour period, Dom very much offers her the opportunity to be with him long term, and she turns him down, and he's really kind of angry about this, and he says, if you leave me now, then I'll never forgive you, and I'll never take you back. She leaves anyway, and then after that there is this big separation in this story where this couple are apart for quite a long time. Both of them are obviously going to be pining for each other, and then we, you know, as we go through the book, we find out how they're going to make their way back to each other and what Drew is going to have to do in order to kind of seek forgiveness from Dom. This was a very short read, and like I said, it was very insta-lovey. Our hero was very over the top and obsessed. I did enjoy this one. It wasn't my favourite of the month though, and so like I said, 3.5 stars, rounded up to 4 on Goodreads. So then I picked up Twisted Pride by Cora Reilly. This is a copy that I picked up when I was at Rare Edinburgh 2024. This is obviously book 3 in the Cora Chronicles. It's a much loved book by very many people, and I had been slowly working my way through the Born in Blood series and into the Cora Chronicles so I could finally get to this book. Last month I read Twisted Loyalties and Twisted Emotions, so I was delighted to get to Twisted Pride in the month of December, and again this one did not disappoint, rated this one 5 stars. This is a mafia romance, captive kidnapping situation. We've got a virgin heroine in this one, enemies to lovers and secret baby, and we are following Remo and Serafina. I'm not sure I need to tell you too much about this book, because if you love mafia romances, you have very likely read it, and if you haven't read it, then there's a very high probability you've at least heard about this book, because it has been a long time favourite for many mafia lovers. So we're in a situation where we are following Remo, and Remo is head of the Cumorah Chronicles. We know he's a little bit unhinged, he's very passionate, he's full of emotions, and you know, many people are afraid of him and his immediate crew. So Nino, his other brothers, and of course Fabiano, they are very much feared. Of course, loads of things have gone down in previous books, and we know that the Cumorah are at war with both the outfit in Chicago and also the Familia in New York. But in particular, the Cumorah and the Familia have kind of joined forces in an attempt to bring the outfit down. And in particular, Fabiano, who's the hero for book 1 of the story, is the son of the consigliere from the outfit. His father pretty much left him for dead, and he wants to seek revenge on his father. So they've been plotting for quite some time to bring down Fabiano's father, and one of the ways they're going to do that is by kidnapping Serafina on her wedding day. She is part of the outfit, and she's due to marry a very high-ranking member of the outfit, and Remo thinks it's going to be a brilliant idea to basically kidnap her on her wedding day when she's on her way to the church, so she's still going to be wearing her wedding dress. And then the idea is that they're going to take her back to Las Vegas, hold her captive, and then barter her for Fabiano's father, where they are going to then torture and kill him. So this is kind of the plan, and this is how this book starts, where they go off then to kidnap Serafina, and they manage to do that, and they get her back to Las Vegas. Of course, Serafina is not going to take this lying down. Yes, she is a mafia princess, but she's absolutely not a pushover, and she kind of like really kind of stands up to Remo and really gives as good as she gets. Now, in order to really kind of like, you know, destroy the outfit, bring them to their knees as it were, they are going to basically pretend, abuse, torture, hurt Serafina, so that the outfit like are really upset by this and are definitely going to hand over Fabiano's dad. And so this is kind of a very classic captive situation, where while Serafina is in his captivity, she's going to absolutely drive him mad, because he's not going to want to hurt her. He can't understand why he's not prepared to do it, because he wouldn't normally hold back, but there's definitely something about her that he doesn't want to hurt her. But he's also really attracted to her as well, so he's very confused by this whole situation and the pull that he seems to have to her, and also the power that she seems to hold over him as well. And Serafina is very stubborn. This is called twisted pride after all, and she is not going to give in. Ultimately, they have a relationship together. Serafina fights every step of the way. She feels very guilty for what's happening, and then when crunch time actually happens, when they actually comes time for them to do this trade, for Remo to hand Serafina over so they can get Fabiano's dad in her place, it's going to cause quite a lot of conflict for both of them, because Serafina is kind of secretly devastated that he wants to give her away. He's also devastated that he has to give her away, but ultimately he wants her to love him for who he is, and not because he's forcing her to stay. So in the back of his mind, he thinks if he releases her, she'll come back to him. So I absolutely loved how this kind of played out. I loved seeing the kind of the turn of events that ultimately brings these two back together, because it is a romance. They do end up together, and there's bits in this book that are so powerful. One bit in particular, which I won't talk about because I don't want to spoil it, but I thought it was absolutely fantastic. Really well done, absolutely fantastic. And like I say, I absolutely love this one. Rated it 5 stars, would highly recommend. So then I went on to read Keep Me by Sarah Cate. This is book 1 in the Sinful Manor series. It's a contemporary billionaire romance, marriage of convenience, and we have a tortured hero. We are following Killian and Sylvie. Now, at the start of December, I had a trip up to Scotland, so I read this while I was on the way up, because I thought it would be very atmospheric, because this particular book is set in Scotland, and our hero is a Scottish billionaire who kind of lives in this kind of castle in Scotland. So the story here is that Killian is this very reclusive sort of billionaire. In fact, he hasn't left the manor for about a decade, and he harbours a lot of guilt and has a lot of mental health issues following the death of his parents. Now, he does have family. He has a couple of brothers and a sister and also an aunt, but he's the one that kind of inherited the manor, so he's the one that lives there. Now, he has, like I say, he's become very, very reclusive, doesn't really go out, certainly doesn't work, and he's kind of become very drunk and disorderly. And he's also become well known for having wild parties at the manor where he invites friends over. And there's definitely rumours that these are kind of sex parties, definitely some swinging going on and other unsavoury acts, shall we say, so that the rest of the family are mortified that he's using the manor for this purpose. In particular, the aunt really wants to get the manor off him, and there's some sort of weird clause in his inheritance contract which basically says that if he gets married and is married for a year, the manor will pass to the wife, and then the wife can then pass the manor on to the other family members. So kind of what they do really is hatch a plan to get him out of the manor so that they can restore it to its former glory. So this is where Sylvie comes into it, because Sylvie is an American girl. She has recently made an appearance at the manor because her and her boyfriend have been doing a bit of a tour. They specifically went to Scotland because her boyfriend was kind of trying to track his family roots. And in particular, there is talk of an old typewriter that one of his relatives used to write a very famous book. And this typewriter is supposed to be in residence at this manor. And so in their tour of Scotland, they go to this manor. It's clear someone lives there, so the boyfriend doesn't want to go in. But Sylvie is a bit of wild and reckless, and she decides that she's going to sneak into the manor and try and find this typewriter. And so when she sees a woman leaving by a side door, she slips inside and basically, searches the house for the typewriter. Of course, during her little adventure through the house, she is going to run into Killian. They're going to have a bit of a meet cute, shall we say, a bit of banter in between them, and then eventually she's going to flee from the house, and they get out there and she goes back to America with her boyfriend. Now, it's not too long after that she actually finds him in bed with her best friend, and so they split up, and now she doesn't have a boyfriend and she's kind of like, down on her luck, as it were. In fact, in addition to that, she did have very wealthy parents who are artists, and they had been given her money to live, but they've recently cut her off financially as well, and trying to force her to get a job and sort of life out. And so yeah, she's left without any place to stay, without any money, and without a boyfriend. And this is perfect timing, because Killian's sister then basically comes to see her and offers her this deal, and the deal is that she has to marry Killian. She has to stay married to him for a year. She has to be faithful to Killian during this time. At the end of the year, she'll be signed over the manor. She's got to sign it over to the family, but in exchange, they'll give her $10 million to go on her merry way. And of course, she thinks this is the perfect answer to her problems. And so then she basically travels back to Scotland and marries Killian, and the rest of the book is about them and the first year of their marriage and all of the things that are going to go on in this manor, but also how they start to form a friendship and a bit of a bond with each other. And of course, now this sort of secret is looming over her head. Overall, this isn't my favourite Sarah Cate book that I've ever read, but I did enjoy it. Rated this one 4 stars. Next up then, I picked up The Horde King of Shadow by Zoey Draven. This was a new release in December, and I absolutely love this one and rated this one 5 stars. This is book 1 in her new series, The Horde Kings of Elthica, and this is a spin-off from The Horde Kings of Dakar that we've seen previously. So this is very much a fantasy, sort of alien sci-fi sort of romance. It's got dragons, and this one was an arranged marriage between Clara and Sarkin. Well, I say an arranged marriage, but essentially our Horde King, Sarkin, doesn't give her or her family very much choice, because Sarkin comes from across the sea. He is a dragon rider, so part of a new group of Horde Kings that we've not seen before, but they are dragon riders. Their dragons are powered by the Heartstones, and the Heartstones are dying, so they are desperately seeking out new Heartstones. Now, we know from the previous series that there is a Heartstone that resides in the capital city of Dothikar, and basically this particular Horde king is sent to go there to try and get this Heartstone basically for his people. The thing is, when he gets there, they're kind of doing a bit of recon, and he knows that the Heartstone is dying, but he also knows about this woman who is Clara, who is supposed to have a gift, and her gift is that she can sense where Heartstones are. So he basically offers these people a deal: give me Clara in marriage, I will take her back to my lands with me, or I'm going to basically destroy the whole city. And so of course she agrees to marry him to save her people, and then goes back with him to his kind of homeland across the sea, where she is forced to ride a dragon, because these are dragon riders, and now she is a queen, and so it's not very fitting for a queen not to be able to ride a dragon. So she actually then has to go through quite a grueling process of learning how to ride a dragon, training to own a dragon. But the thing is, the dragons are their own very intelligent sentient creatures, and they are very much equals. And so if you want to catch a dragon, you have to be accepted by the dragon in order to be its rider. And obviously through all of this, through all of her training, she's going to get much closer to Sarkin. They're going to form a bond between each other. There's going to be great chemistry between them. Zoey Draven does this so well, where you've got a very kind of like dark, kind of brooding hero that really doesn't want to have emotions for a woman because he believes it's going to make him weak, but ultimately he isn't going to be able to resist. And in addition to the fact that Clara is such a fantastic heroine, she's very, very feisty. She is prepared to put in as much work as she needs to not only win over his people, win over him, but also the dragon that she's got in her sights. But she's also very talented in the sense that she does have a power which does enable her to have visions. And ultimately she's going to point the way to the Heartstones, which is just what they need. So I absolutely love this one. I rated it 5 stars. So after that, I picked up The Ritual by Shantel Tessier. This is the Lords series, book 1. It's very much a dark romance set in college. There's a secret society, masked men, a very possessive hero, and a very twisty plot, I would say. And we were following Riot and Blakely. Now I was really, really looking forward to this one because I love a dark romance, and I love a kind of very obsessive kind of dark sort of hero. But this one felt just a little bit shorter than my expectations, so it was still a good read. Rated this one 4 stars, but I was expecting a little bit more from this one. So essentially what we know is that Riot is part of this sort of secret society, and members of this secret society are very, very powerful people in a variety of positions, anything from lawyers to kind of judges, to people in law enforcement. And to get into this society, you have to be part of a family that has previously been in the society. So Riot's father, for example, is in the society, and so he's been born and bred into this kind of secret society world, and the expectation is very high, of course, that he will enter the society. Now how this works though is that you have to be initiated, and you have to kind of prove your loyalty to the society before you're properly kind of indoctrinated in. But once you are in, you are promised power and wealth and riches beyond your wildest imaginations, but all you have to do is do whatever the society says. So when he first starts college, he obviously joins and enters the initiation, and then what happens is they kind of like put you through a series of challenges, shall we say, over the years. And one of the things they ask you to do is to remain celibate for the first 3 years of college, and then in the final year of college you basically get given a tribute, and you can pick your own tribute, but essentially it's a woman who you can do whatever you want with basically for the final year of college. And then once you're through that, you've passed your initiation, and then you get to fully be in the society. So this starts very much where Riot joins the society, and we have some very quick chapters, which I really appreciated at the start of this. It got the book off to a really fast pace because we see year 1, year 2, year 3, and a couple of things happen during these years. And then finally we're in year 4, where he finally gets to pick his kind of tribute, if you like. And then our tribute is Blakely. Now we don't know much about Blakely to start off with. All we do know is that she is the girlfriend of another person who is trying to go through the initiation process. and they've been dating for quite some time. In fact, they both come from very wealthy families and they are supposedly arranged in marriage. So they're kind of dating mainly because they know ultimately they will be married. Now, she is a virgin at the start of this story and she has been trying to convince her boyfriend to sleep with her, and of course he keeps pushing her away, and we know that's because he's supposed to stay celibate during the initiation process, but she's feeling quite rejected by this and kind of what's happening. Now, as part of the secret society, obviously there's lots of mind games that are played, lots of things that happen, and these boys are kind of like trained to be quite brutal and hard and demanding, and so they are supposed to pretty much treat their tributes like sex slaves, to do whatever they want, and so it comes across as sort of very dark, very sort of brutal, and he's going to be horrible to whoever is going to be his tribute, and his main goal is going to be that he's going to force her into submission, and that is ultimately going to break her and she becomes his plaything basically. Now, he pretty much gets an order as part of his initiation to pick Blakely, and of course his friend in the secret society is not going to be too happy because that's his girlfriend and ultimately the woman he's supposed to marry. But when you get an order, you have to kind of comply. So Riot then sets about trying to play mind games with Blakely. So ultimately, when she has to be chosen as tribute, she's going to do so willingly, because ultimately she's going to also have to go through a bit of a ceremony, kind of be initiated into this secret society, and kind of vow that she's going to be riots for a specified time period. Of course, she only knows bits and pieces of what he's told her. She doesn't know the full story, but she willingly kind of like dives in with both feet because she's pissed off with the boyfriend. She's now sexually frustrated and she's secretly quite drawn to Riot, so she wants to spend a bit more time with him. Obviously, at the start of this, I also said that it was quite twisty from a plot perspective, and so there's lots going on. Obviously, this is a secret society, and we start to uncover a lot more about the characters, what they're kind of been asked to do, who everyone is, and the relationship between everybody, and why Riot has been ordered to pick Blakely as his tribute. The reason why this fell short for me, mainly was because of Riot and Blakely's kind of relationship, which is the main reason I want to read this, right? Because it's a dark romance and that's what I want to kind of get into. The thing is, like I said, he starts off very much being like, well, I don't like this woman, she's been picked for me, so I'm going to break her and I am going to, you know, make her submit, and yeah, I'm going to treat her like shit. It's pretty much his sort of stance. However, he immediately becomes obsessed with her, where he doesn't want anyone to look at her, doesn't want anyone else to touch her, and becomes very, very kind of protective of her as well. And so we always get this like whiplash of him going from, in his mind, you know, saying he's going to break her and be really, really mean, to almost no one else can touch her and are very overly protective of her. And so the transition in him between going from like kind of a dark kind of hero to someone who becomes obsessed and wanted to protect Blakely happened almost too quickly for me. It was very insta-lovey almost, in this really kind of like weird way. And yes, some parts were quite dark. He was quite brutal in places, but I was expecting something different from this story. That's all I'll say about that. Now, interestingly, the next book I finished was Save One Thing by Julia Wolfe, and I listened to this one on audiobook, and I think this was also another reason why the Shantel Tessier fell slightly flat, because it was quite jarring to go from this very dark romance within a very aggressive sort of hero that I was reading on my Kindle, going to a Julia Wolfe that I was listening to as an audiobook, where the hero in this story was so sweet and swoony, and the story was very, very romantic. Now, normally I would pick a dark hero over a light hero any day of the week, because I just like those heroes sort of more. But the Julia Wolfe absolutely picked this one to the post. I would definitely pick this Julia Wolfe book over The Ritual any day of the week, and rated this one 4.5 stars. It's book 1 in the Savage Academy, and like I said, I listened to this one as an audiobook, and it was narrated by Kingsley Rose and Nelson Hobbs. This is also another high school to college romance. It's enemies to lovers. We've got virgin male and female characters in this one, and very much a pining hero. And we are following Beckett and Luciana. So, like I say, this is set in her sort of savage universe. Luciana is the sister of Helen, who was the heroine from book 1 of the Savage U series. And Becca is related to Julian, who is book 4 in the Savage U series. So we have got kind of like younger siblings here now in high school, in senior year of high school. And Beckett and Luciana have known each other for a long time because they have kind of been around each other's families. And Beckett in particular has been in love with Luciana since he was just a young boy. And in fact, he has been waiting for her. So he basically has never ever wanted to be with anyone else and has basically been waiting for Luciana. So he's absolutely so sweet. The thing is, Beckett's done everything he possibly can to be near to Luciana, even kind of manipulating kind of where she goes to school and very much helping with her accommodation, because where they go to school is Savage Academy and it's kind of a live-in academy. So basically students kind of board there, and so he's also made it possible for her to get a scholarship and be able to board at this school, so that he is in much closer proximity to her, and he's got a very much a long-term plan to woo her, win her over, and ultimately make her his. Now Luciana herself is a fantastic character. Like I said, she's Helen's sister. Her mum is unfortunately sort of drunk and disorderly. She is a drug user, lives in a trailer park, and has not been the best role model for Luciana, shall we say. But Helen has really been the one who's been bringing her up all this time, and so she grew up being sort of a skateboarder, very into sports, but now she plays field hockey and is so talented that she has got a scholarship not only to Savage U but ultimately to a university of her choice, and later will become pro field hockey player. Now, like I said, this isn't enemies to lovers, which is surprising, right? Because I've already said that Beckett has been in love with Luciana for years and has been trying to make her his. The thing is, Luciana is absolutely certain that Beckett hates her because he wasn't the most eloquent person when he was younger. He maybe said some things that upset Luciana. She took them the wrong way, things that he definitely didn't mean, but she thought. And in addition to that, Beckett also got her into trouble because she wasn't supposed to skateboard in order to maintain her field hockey scholarship, because skateboarding was too dangerous and she'd already fallen over and broken her wrist once. And so he was the one that kind of like dobbed her into the school, if you like, and forced her to quit skateboarding permanently if she wanted to play field hockey. And of course she absolutely loves skateboarding but knows that she needs to play field hockey in order to get her scholarship so she can complete her education, but she very much is still very upset by Beckett for what he's done there. But like I said, now they're in the senior year of high school, and Beckett starts to woo her and win her over, and this is their story of how he manages to do that. And like I said, in tandem with reading a very dark romance from Shantel Tessier, Beckett just really shone as such a sweet and caring kind of hero. It was really clear that he would do anything for Luciana and would absolutely treat her like a queen, and I just absolutely loved it. Now this one wasn't so sweet that it was sickly. This was definitely sweet in a way that I liked, because these two characters both had a lot going on. They had a lot to work through. Quite a bit of drama kind of happens in this book that they need to sort out. Beckett is so in love with her and very protective that he goes a little too far on some occasions, and he needs to figure that out as well. But ultimately I think Julia Wolf always does such a fantastic job of putting so much heart into her stories, and I really wanted this couple to get together, and I can't wait to read the other books in this series as well. Next up then, another 5-star read. We've got Sweet Prison by Neva Altaj, and this is book 10 in the Perfectly Imperfect series. I absolutely love this one. This is a mafia romance. It's Cosa Nostra Mafia. We've got an ex-con in here. It's an age gap, step siblings, so it's taboo romance as well, and I would say a slow burn. We were following Massimo and Sahara. So this very much finishes the story from book 9 in the series, which was Darkest Sins. Because book 9 was about Neva, which is Zahara's sister, and definitely some things that happen in that book cross over into this one, and this is kind of a culmination of that story. So this story kind of has some flashbacks to the past as we work our way to the current play, if you like. Now, Massimo and Sara are step siblings, so this is technically a taboo story, but they never really kind of grew up together. Yes, there's quite a big age gap, but Massimo has actually been in prison for the majority of Sahara's life, and they only kind of knew each other before he went to prison when Sahara was just quite young, just about the age of 3. So there's quite a big age gap between them. I think there's about 17 years, something like that. But essentially what happens is Massimo actually ends up going to prison for killing the man who killed Sahara's brother. And since he's been in prison, he has very much been controlling the mafia from his prison cell, because he was really always the one who was going to lead, and Sahara's father has been the one who's kind of been leading in name only, and Massimo's very much been pulling the strings all this time. Now, when Sahara grows up, she's sort of like maybe 11, 12, something like that. She gets a school assignment to write a letter to a relative, and she instantly thinks of Massimo, and she decides to write to him in prison. And she finds this very kind of therapeutic for her. Sahara has a skin condition, which basically means that parts of her skin are different colours, so she doesn't have pigment in some parts of her skin, so she has these kind of white patches kind of on her arms and on her face as well. And so obviously children can be very cruel, and she's not had a great time of it at school, so she kind of finds it very therapeutic to kind of write to Massimo. And at first he doesn't write back to her, but she keeps writing to him, and eventually he does return one of her letters. And so they kind of start this sort of pen pal relationship, which is extremely innocent as she's sort of growing up. But what Massimo actually realises is that Sahara is revealing very innocent parts of her day and recounting information about what's going on in the house. And he realises that this doesn't always match up with what Sahara's father is telling him when he comes to visit him in prison. And so he comes up with this idea that he's actually going to start to use Sahara almost like as a bit of a spy in the house to kind of reinforce information, maybe gather additional information, and try and figure out what is truth and what is lies. Now, Sahara is completely aware that this is going on. He's not trying to trick her or trap her in any way, but she is more than willing to do it because she really, really wants to feel useful, like she can actually help and kind of find some sort of empowerment in what she's doing. And so she really kind of respects Massimo for what she thinks is quite a lot of responsibility that he's given to her, and that really gives her a lot of confidence. So Massimo is definitely doing a lot for her, like her feelings of empowerment, like I say, her levels of confidence and feeling kind of useful and like she can contribute to this family. Now, we know from book 9 that when Sahara's father dies, both Sahara and her sister Neva go to the funeral, and Massimo is allowed out of prison to attend this funeral. And this is the very first time that Massimo sets his eyes on Sahara since she was about 3 years old. And now she is a stunningly beautiful young woman, and at this point she's about 17 years of age. And this is when he starts to really think about Sahara very differently, because before that he's always pictured her as a young sort of girl wearing pigtails, but now he's starting to really realise that she is in fact a young woman, and then starts to feel a little bit guilty about some of the things he's making her do, because he starts to realise that she is potentially in danger and he doesn't want her to be in danger at all. And so he kind of like then attempts to cut her off in order to keep her safe. And it is still a few more years before Massimo eventually will come out of prison, but when he finally comes out of prison and takes his rightful place as the head of this Cosa Nostra mafia, Sahara is the one that he kind of trusts the most and asks Sahara to stay with him, and she does. And so her sister is quite taken aback that Sahara wants to stay with Massimo, but they've built up a great connection, a great friendship, and a great amount of trust between them. And Zahara continues to be a great asset to Massimo and the kind of the mafia overall. And of course, they are then going to start to fall for each other because, quite frankly, Zahara's been in love with him anyway since she was very young, but Massimo is now starting to see her as an actual woman. But they kind of fight their attraction, at least Massimo does, not only because of the age gap, but also because of their step-sibling status. And while there's absolutely no blood connection here, they weren't together growing up, obviously they know it's going to be frowned upon. In particular, you know, it's not going to be great in their kind of very traditional mafia families, but they cannot hide their attraction, and they're going to find a way to overcome the challenges that face them. And I just absolutely loved every moment of this book. I thought the romance between them was absolutely fantastic, and as always, Neva Altaj has made a fantastic couple, fantastic romance here. And I always say that every single book I read of hers just gets better and better and better, and this one was no different. So then I picked up Corrupt by Penelope Douglas, and I've been wanting to read a book by Penelope Douglas for absolutely ages, and I decided to start with Corrupt, which is book 1 in the Devil's Night series. I started to listen to this one as an audiobook and then finished this one on KU, and it was narrated by Jeremy York and Tatiana Sokolov. Now, this is another dark kind of new adult romance. There's definitely a revenge plot in here. It kind of starts in high school and then kind of moves on through colleges. It does also include some flashbacks, and ultimately it's a brother's girlfriend or brother's ex-girlfriend slash boyfriend's brother, if that makes sense, because we're following Rika and Michael. Now, the premise of this one is that basically Michael has got 3 friends, and they are pretty much the most popular guys in school, but also troublemakers, and they kind of have this tradition that they call Devil's Night, where on Devil's Night they basically go around on a bit of a rampage around town, causing kind of loads of trouble. Now, they always kind of wear masks when they're doing it, and everyone knows it's them, but they're never caught because obviously they're wearing masks. They started to do this when they were teenagers, and every year this kind of escalates into a little bit more. Now, the only rule is that you have to be kind of 18 or over to kind of go along with them, really, especially if you are a girl. But they kind of come through school, cheering everyone up, and then people start to leave, and then they kind of have this big party. And like I say, during Devil's Night, this crazy stuff happens around town, and it ends up with this sort of big party. Now, Michael has a brother called Trevor, and Trevor has a girlfriend called Rika. Now, Rika hasn't really ever had that great feelings for Trevor, but their families have always kind of assumed that they'll eventually get together. They're always kind of pushed together. They're the same age at school. Trevor's always really had a thing for her, but secretly she has always had a thing for Michael, who is Trevor's older brother, because he's sort of dark, mysterious, he's a little bit scary, and he and Trevor do not get on at all. But she's always had a thing, like I said, for Michael, and Trevor kind of knows this and always has been quite jealous about their kind of chemistry, their attraction to each other. But Michael has never really done anything about this. But as Rika has grown older, she's become more beautiful, and Michael also has kind of been harbouring feelings for her. And so when she is 16 and Michael is 18, he comes back from college to basically, you know, carry out Devil's Night, and he kind of invites her along, even though she's not really old enough to go with them. But of course she is sick of being told what to do. She really wants to spend a bit of time with Michael, and she wants to do something a bit wild and crazy, and so she goes with him, and she kind of gets in with his friendship group. They do some crazy things around town, and they also like to record what's going on. Now, the night turns out pretty badly, and in the morning some video footage is kind of like released to the police, and all 3 of Michael's friends, except for Michael, but all of the 3 of Michael's friends end up then being caught because of this video footage and going to prison for 3 years. And they very much believe that it is Rika who has done this, and so since they were put away and they've spent time in prison, they have had this revenge plot going on in their head, that when they get out of prison, they're going to make her pay for what she did to them by dobbing them in to the police and putting them in prison. And so Michael is in this very, very tricky situation because he's got an extreme amount of loyalty to his friends. He really, really wants to help them get revenge against Rika. But the thing is, he really has feelings for her and kind of wants to be with her. And so he has this kind of like hate-love relationship with her where, you know, he doesn't want to spend any time with her. He can't stand to look at her, but also is very much attracted to her and wants to be with her. And so it's going to come to a bit of a head when they finally get out of prison, because they're going to start to enact their plans, and Michael is very much going to be torn between wanting to help them but also wanting to keep Rika safe. I thought this was an absolutely fantastic story because there's so much going on here. The characters have so much depth. I think Penelope Douglas has done such a great job in really creating really sort of deep characters with some great backstories. They've all got a lot going on, they've all been through a lot. I think the tale was told really, really well, with a combination of the flashbacks going back to that night to see what actually happened, and you know how the story is going to kind of unfold and what everyone's kind of role in that story was. So I think it was brilliantly done, really, really well told, thoroughly enjoyed it, rated it 4.5 stars, rounded up to 5 on Goodreads. Then I picked up The Tyrant by Vanessa Waltz. This is book 2 in the Filthy Rich Villain series, another dark romance. It's actually a billionaire romance. It's quite spicy with the sex club and BDSM elements to it. It's also mafia adjacent, and in this one we are following Indy and Brian Knox, who is the Tyrant. So essentially Brian Knox is a kind of very broody billionaire. He's got ties to the mafia because he's very good friends with Tony, who is the hero from book 1 who is in the mafia. What we know about Knox though is that he wasn't always a billionaire. He very much came from a very, very kind of poor, humble sort of background, and therefore he kind of grew up in the ghetto. So he knows what it's like to live in a very, very bad neighbourhood where there's lots of drugs on the streets. And since he's become kind of this billionaire, because he's also super intelligent and you know, went to college at a very early age, and now is kind of like this tech sort of genius. He also is into a lot of real estate, and what he's kind of been doing is tearing down the old ghettos and building new places in their place. But he's very much hidden his past, so no one really knows why he does this, but he's got a bad reputation for doing it because as people see it, he is ousting people from their homes, right? So these very, very poor people, he's forcing them to leave their homes and actually giving them no alternative, because he's not building affordable housing, he's replacing the ghettos with sort of more up and coming trendy places that only rich people can afford. So he's got himself a bit of a bad reputation, but he's also protects his privacy quite a lot. So there's always lots of salacious rumours about him in the press, but he doesn't really let anyone do any feature pieces on him or anything else. So this is where our heroine comes into the tale, Indy, because she is a journalist. Currently she's just writing for a women's magazine, but she has you know, she has ideas of writing proper feature pieces with real grit to them, and she decides that she wants to interview Brian Knox and kind of really uncover him. She does a lot of research, she figures out a bit more about his past, what's been going on, speaks to his old teachers, that sort of thing, really wants to tell the real story about him. But Knox is not having any of this, and he pretty much thwarts her story. Still, in their initial introductory meeting where she's kind of interviewing him, he becomes very intrigued by her, but like I say, ultimately blocks her story from being put into the papers. So she is absolutely livid with him, but like I say, he's very attracted to her and kind of asks her out on a bit of a date, and she's sort of very much declines, and she's like, no, absolutely not interested, especially as you've just ruined my story. But he kind of quietly continues to pursue her. Now it comes to a bit of a head because in tandem with this, she starts to investigate some missing women. So she has found out about this story where women are going missing. She believes it's centered around some sort of sex club where women are then being trafficked. But membership at this club is quite difficult, and so she has then tried to apply for membership. She's finally got into this club, and the first night that she's there, she is going to be kind of dominated by this man called Kanan, who is kind of our villain in this story, if you like, but actually is the hero from book 3, of course, who also frequents his sex club, spots her when she first turns up, but Brian knocks, and he's not too happy that Kanan is, you know, attempting to dominate her, and kind of steps into the situation and kind of rescues her from this bad situation. When she finally gets back to her apartment though, there's a man waiting for her in the apartment, and he goes to attack her, and she ends up killing him in self-defense. And absolutely freaked out, she doesn't know what to do. Instead of ringing the police like she probably should have done, she ends up ringing Brian Knox and says, can you help me, I've just unalived someone. And so he ends up going to her apartment, pulling in some favours from his mafia friend to kind of dispose of the body, and he's basically then agrees to help her in exchange that she's going to go and live with him and kind of be his submissive for an indefinite amount of time. But ultimately he wants to marry her and, you know, wants to be with her permanently, but he knows he's got to enter this kind of arrangement to convince her to kind of be with him. The reason that this man has been in the apartment though is because she's been digging up too much dirt, and some bad people really don't want her telling stories about these missing women, and so it not only puts her in a very tight spot, but also now Knox is involved and it puts him in a tight spot as well, and their relationship and the plot kind of goes from there. I did enjoy this one. It wasn't my favourite read from Vanessa Waltz, but I rated it 3.5 stars, rounded it up to 4 on Goodreads. Then I picked up The Naughty List by Jade West, and this is book 1 in the Naughtier and Naughtier series. I saw this because I thought it was a Christmas sort of novella. I knew it was going to be spicy because obviously it's Jade West, but I thought it was a novella, but actually it was just shy of 300 pages, so almost a full-length story. And this one is pure spice. Yes, it was a Christmas novel and it was based on a sex worker, and I would also say this one was not a romance, it was literally an erotic sort of tale, because the main character we were following with was Ella, and essentially Ella is somebody who needs some cash so that she can go and visit her parents in Australia. She's recently split up with her loser boyfriend, who is a wannabe musician, and he's kind of been bleeding her dry, and she's been working her finger to the bone basically to help pay his rent while he's living his dream. And of course he's going to go off and have an affair with somebody else, and so she is now in a place where she lives in a crappy apartment. She has got no money at all because she's run up loads of debts for him, and she is kind of stacking shelves in a supermarket, and so is really struggling to kind of make ends meet. And so she decides to enter the sex working trade because she's heard from a friend about this app you can sign up to. So this agency you can sign up to essentially, where you will select all the things you're willing to do, and then customers will basically submit scenarios, fantasies that they want to fulfill, and then they will offer, as long as you've ticked all the boxes of the things that you're prepared to do, they will pick you from a catalogue essentially, submit their fantasy, offer a price, and if you're willing to accept it, then you kind of hook up to do whatever that fantasy is. And of course this book starts off with some very simple sex acts, shall we say, and completely escalates to more and more kinky kind of erotic fantasies. And so we have everything in here that you can possibly think of, everything from bondage, BDSM, daddy kink, group play, hardcore, BDSM where she is locked in a dungeon, you name it, it's kind of in here. Now, I was enjoying it up to a point, but then for me, the kink just got a little bit too much, to the point where I was literally crossing my legs, because this woman took a pounding, that's all I will say, and I did fear for the state of her downstairs, shall we say. At least she needed time to recover between customers, but she was going for it. She was all in, shall we say. So like I said, this started off fun. It was an erotic read, definitely revolved around Christmas because she was saving money to go and see her parents for the holidays. But like I say, not a romance at all. In this particular book, I know in book 2 she kind of gets herself a boyfriend, but in this one, no sign of any romance. It was just, like I say, the spicy scenes got more and more kinky and erotic as we went through the book. So overall I rated this 3.5 stars, rounded it up to 4 on Goodreads. Then after that I read Citadel by Claire Kent. This is book 5 in her Kindled series. This is a dystopian romance, post-apocalyptic tale, so also survival, age gap, a virgin heroine and a tortured hero, and we're following Cole and Del. So in this Kindled series, the Earth has been hit by an asteroid, and then we're following various humans and groups of humans who are surviving post-impact. And in this particular tale, like I said, we're following Cole and Del. Del is actually living with her sister in this sort of community when this book first starts, but their community is attacked by a kind of a roving group, a baddie group if you like, and Del and her sister kind of have to escape. Cole is somebody who is there and helps them escape and then agrees to help them to safety. And what we find out about Cole is that he's desperately searching for his brother, and he keeps hearing rumours about where his brother is, so he's trying to, you know, find him, and so he's very much been on the move ever since the asteroid has hit, and he hasn't really ever found himself a place to kind of stay. But he takes it upon himself to get Del and her sister to safety, and they walk for many days until they finally get to this community where they feel safe and he can leave them. And so he does leave them, but during their kind of like their adventures if you like, Del and Cole get close together, and it's clear they have some form of connection both physically and emotionally. But Cole isn't in a position to be staying in one place. He still is absolutely determined to find his brother, even if it means his own sacrificing his own happiness. But about a month or two later, he actually comes back to town just to check that Del and her sister are still okay, and while he's there they end up sleeping together. Now, Del very much thinks that this might mean Cole stick around, but he doesn't, and in fact he kind of leaves before she's like even woken up the next morning, and so she is kind of very upset about this. I wouldn't say she's heartbroken, but she feels like he's very much betrayed her trust, because even though he wanted to leave, she felt that he could at least have said that to her face and at least said goodbye after what they did. 2 years then pass, and Del and her sister kind of move on, and Del kind of, you know, moves on with her life. She even has a boyfriend for a time until unfortunately he passes away. And like I say, about 2 years later, Cole comes back into their life once more, and this time Del's sister is actually in trouble because she's been taken captive by this another sort of baddie roving group, and so Cole is the only one that Del can ask to help her track her sister down and rescue her from this baddie group. And so of course now they are going to go on another road trip together and finally figure things out between them. I always love Claire Kent. I think they're good solid reads, good solid romances, and I rated this one 3.5 star, rounded it up to 4 on Goodreads. Then I picked up a really fun book. It was The Grumpy Bratva Hitman by Sonja Gray. This is a mafia romance, but it's a standalone. It was a holiday novella, forced marriage, where the heroine was a witness to a crime, and there's also an age gap between these two as well. Now, I'd recently read some Sonja Gray mafia romances for the first time. She did over-the-top Russian mafia heroes. It was very insta-lovey, very fast-paced, quick, fun books. And this one was no exception. This was only a novella, so it did move at a very quick pace. And we were following Alexander and Holly. And essentially, Holly is an elf in a toy department for the holidays, selling obviously Christmas toys to parents. Alexander is a grumpy hitman, and essentially he's been sent to unalive the manager of the toy department. And so one night after work, she is going to see her manager to talk about her upcoming shifts, and she happens to stumble into the office when Alexander is you know, doing his job, shall we say. So now she is a witness to Alexander's crime, and so he cannot let her escape. And in fact, she's got two options. She either marries him so that she is protected, or he's going to have to unalive her as well. And so of course she chooses marriage over being unalived, and then it's kind of like just following kind of what happens after that. But like I said, this is very insta-lovey. She really doesn't put up much of a fuss. She isn't too shocked by what she's witnessed, and everything goes swimmingly for this couple. But I thought it was a great, fun, festive read, so I would definitely recommend. Rated this one 3.5 stars, rounded up to 4 on Goodreads. Then I picked up the Arcav General's Woman by Hope Hart. This is book 3 in the Arcav Alien Invasion series. I've been really enjoying this series. And also I appreciate the fact that all the books are just over 200 pages, so also really quick reads as well. But this one actually blew me away. I thought it was absolutely fantastic for such a short read, and the topic being alien romance as well. I absolutely love the characters, I love the storyline of this one, and I loved the plot, and I actually ended up rating this one 4.5 stars, rounding it up to 5 on Goodreads. So as I've said, this is an alien sci-fi romance. We're dealing with fated mates. It's also a survival story, a captive situation, and a rescue mission, because we were following Methy and Megan. Now Methy is our Arcav and Megan is our human. Now when they first met in a previous book, Megan was only 17 years old, but it was a very apparent straight away that she was Methy's mate. But of course, being under the age of 18 meant that they couldn't be together. And in fact, Methy ends up leaving on a mission to get away from Megan because he really wants to avoid temptation. He's really worried that if he sticks around, the temptation will be too great and he'll do something they both regret. So Methy kind of goes off, and what his mission is to find and rescue the Fecax queen, who has been kind of kidnapped in a previous book and no one can find her. So Megan is absolutely kind of fuming and livid that he's run off without telling her, because actually they'd actually started this very budding sort of friendship and she really misses her friend. But Megan is also extremely intelligent and has been working on Arcav spaceships. She has been working with an engineer and learning how to fly them. Now when she hears that Methy has actually gone missing, the ship that he was in has gone missing, they don't know where he is, presumed dead, she determines she's going to find him, and no one will listen to her or her theories about where he is, because she's just, you know, a young stupid human woman. So she takes matters into her own hands basically, and she takes a ship and she goes off to find him. Now she does find him, and he is actually a captive on this sort of slave planet. So that's all good, except getting off the planet with Methy and returning to Arcav is going to be much more difficult than either of them imagined. And they kind of go on an adventure where they have to then steal a different ship, end up crash landing on another planet, being taken captive by another group of aliens until they can figure out basically a way that they're going to escape and get back to Arcav and end up being together. So like I said, this one I thought was absolutely fantastic for such a short read. Hope Hart has packed so much into this one, and I love the relationship between these two. You could really feel how much they cared about each other. Thoroughly enjoyed it, so I would definitely recommend. And finally then, this is going to be a really long video, but the final book I read in the month of December was another absolutely fantastic tale. It's Entreat Me by Grace Draven, and I deliberately kept this one to last because I knew it was going to be good. I knew I was going to enjoy it, and I really wanted to end the year on an absolute high, and I did. I rated this one 5 stars, and it was everything I thought it was going to be. So this is a standalone, it's a fantasy romance. In fact, it's a Beauty and the Beast retelling. An age gap between the hero and heroine, and we're also dealing of course with a scarred, sort of tortured hero. The couple in here, the main couple in here is Ballad and Louvain, but there's also kind of a second romance running along here with Cinia, who is Louvain's sister, and Gavin, who is Ballad's son. And essentially, like I said, this is a very typical Beauty and the Beast retelling, because we have Ballad in here who has been cursed. In fact, he's been cursed by his ex-wife. In fact, she cursed not only him but his son as well. She cursed them on her deathbed. Now, he has got a very dear friend called Ambrose, who is a sorcerer, and the sorcerer has been desperately trying to find a way to break the curse, and to give himself more time, he's put a protective bubble around kind of like the fortress where Ballad lives, and put them in a bit of a time bubble. So hence the extreme age gap here, because from the point in time where Ballad is cursed, more than 300, almost 400 years pass. And so by the time Louvain comes into this situation, Ballad is getting on for 400 years, and Louvain is obviously you know, a much younger woman, shall we say. Essentially though, one of the ways in which they think they're going to break the curse is if Gavin finds a woman to love him, and he's able to leave the fortress and go into town and start to try and woo some women, and he very much falls in love with Cinia, who is Louvain's sister, and starts to try and court her. At the same time, Louvain and Cinia's father is a merchant. He's made some very questionable business decisions, and now he owes a lot of money to a local businessman who is also the villain of our tale, right? So he's our Gaston character, and he pretty much says to the dad, hey, you owe me lots of money, but I'm happy to clear the debt if you'll let me marry Cinia, because Cinia, the younger daughter, is absolutely beautiful. She's the most beautiful woman the world has ever seen, and he has got his sights firmly on her. Of course, Louvain does not want Cinia to go to this horrible man, and Cinia doesn't want to marry him either. But luckily, Gavin is now on the scene, and Gavin says, I will repay your debt, so you don't have to marry this guy. In exchange, I would like for you to come back to my family home, the fortress, and give me the winter in order to woo you. And if you don't want to marry me at the end of that time, then you are free to go, all debts paid, but my hope is that you'll fall in love with me and we can get married and the job will be a good one. And so Louvain doesn't want Cinia to do this either. She wants to find another solution, but Cinia wants to do the right thing and also to help her family, so she runs off with Gavin back to this fortress, and that forces Louvain to run after Cinia, because she's like, well, I'm not going to let her go alone, I need to protect her virtue, and so I'm going to go as her chaperone. And so Louvain and Cinia end up then spending the winter in the fortress with both Ballad and Gavin and the other household members. So we've got some lovely household characters in this one as well. And I just thought that then the tale that kind of unfolded with the high points that you would find in Beauty and the Beast, absolutely beautiful. The relationship that grows between Ballad and Louvain is absolutely fantastic. The writing style was slightly different to a normal book that I would read, because it's kind of got old worldy language, a little bit of historical sort of language, and also it's told in the third person, but that did not detract in any way from the telling of this story or the love that you felt between these two characters. Like I said, I cannot speak about it highly enough. Beauty and the Beast is my absolute favourite type of retelling, and this one did not disappoint. And if you haven't read it yet and you like fantasy romance, then I would highly recommend. 5-star read. So there you go. I'm so sorry that was so long, but that was all 15 books I read in the month of December, and like I said, I had an absolutely fantastic reading month with 5-star reads. So absolutely delighted to have ended my year on such a high. So as always, I'd just like to say, if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content from me. And all that's left for me to do then is say thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye. So absolutely delighted to have ended my... And in fact, Methy ends up leaving so that he's not... And so Methy actually ends up leaving, so he is not, what's the word? I think because it was quite jarring to go from a book that I was reading on my Kindle to listening to, because it was quite jarring to go from this quite dark romance that I was Next up then, I picked up the Horde King of Shari. And then I'll also do my top 10, and most of those will be making their way into my top 10, and most of those will be making their way into my